right, folks, shalom and welcome to the Yishai Fleisher Show, broadcasting live from Judea to the world. You're a part of it wherever you are. Shalom and welcome to our anniversary, Mike Feuer and Yishai
happy
Fleisher.
Anniversary. Happy anniversary to
That's
you
right.
all.
And Mike Fleisher, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for
much.
joining us. And welcome to the Land of Israel Network. And welcome to a post 9 days, post 3 weeks show, which we are done with the hard and dark part of the year for the Jewish people. And we are now in the second part of Av, which begins today, really, with Tu B'Av. It kind of gets a little bit less in the tension with after the 10th of Av. The 10th of Av is still where the majority of the temple burnt. So it was a bad day.
Right.
It was a bad day. And now Tu B'Av is
a bad day. Yeah, it was a really bad day.
Yeah, it was a bad day. It was a bad day. I on Twitter.
And it continues to be a bad day.
It continues to be a bad day for the Jewish people. Although, calm down, Malkah. Don't overdo it because Tisha B'Av has in it the hidden a yesod, the hidden foundation of a happy day.
Right.
Okay, and it shall be a happy day.
Right, it's like a little seed.
With the help of God in our lifetime. Don't be addicted to mourning.
Right.
Okay, we gotta be addicted.
I'm not addicted to mourning.
We gotta be addicted to love. I think I could write a song like that.
Might as well face it, Yishai.
You're addicted to love. Okay, so we could definitely do something like that. Today is Tu B'Av, Jewish Love Day, if you will.
Is Tet, the letters Tet and
right,
Vav.
Right, it's not two, it's not TWO, and it's not like the numeral 2. It is Tet Vav, which is actually the 15th, the Ides of Av, if you will.
Like it.
Okay, and it is a famous story that the Jews, I love this one. This is one of my favorites. The Jews in the desert, the men who were between 20 and 60, were within the curse, the promise, the plague that they will die in the desert for 40 years and will not enter the land of Israel. So every 9th of Av, which is the night that they got the punishment, the memorial of that night that they got the punishment, the night that they rejected the land of Israel was the 9th of Av. So every 9th of Av in those 40 years, they would dig a hole together in the desert, and the men folk would lie down. Anybody who thought that they were within the
that
group,
age
range, they would lie down there, and in the morning,
that's rough.
Some would
that
get
must
up.
Have been horrible.
Yeah.
You know, Yishai,
wait, I didn't finish.
Sorry,
Let me finish.
Go.
Some would get up, and some wouldn't. And those that wouldn't get up, that's it. That was their last day on earth. But those who got up thought to themselves, I have a reprieve of another year. Good. And so they kept doing this. In the 40th year, a group of people that thought they were within the range would lie down, and then everybody got up in the morning. So they were like, okay. They were like, maybe we made a mistake. Maybe it's not the 9th of Av. It's not like they had an Apple phone watch or something like that. They didn't know the exact date, maybe. So they were like, okay, they lie down again, 10th. They got up. People got up. They were alive. They went again. They dug their holes. They lie down the 11th, in the 12th, in the 13th, in the 14th. On the 14th night, when on the 15th, they got up again. On the 15th, they dug a hole. But guess what? When they got up, they saw that it was a full moon, and they knew for a fact that Tisha B'Av was the 9th of Av was not on the full moon. Once they saw that full moon, the full moon of Tu B'Av, they knew that the curse was lifted, and that they were amongst the people who were going into the land of Israel.
Right.
So that's the essential.
Wait, does that mean that some people got a free pass?
No, but they weren't sure. You know what I mean? They weren't necessarily sure if they were within or without. They weren't exactly sure of their age. I don't know. You know what I mean? There was a group of people that wasn't exactly sure. They were on the cusp, and so they were liberate.
Yeah,
okay, and
nice.
they were liberated, and they were also, not only that, it meant that the curse was done. It meant that they were going into the land of Israel. It meant that there had been the end of
the
that.
The death is going to stop already. It's so horrific. I can't imagine that scenario. Like, imagine that scenario.
Yeah.
in which people are like lying in their graves.
Well, I love that story because it reminds me of the Holocaust in a way. It's like there are many people that died, but then there's some people that survived, and then they heard the Russians or the Americans coming to liberate the camps, and it was like, okay, well, you know what I mean? And even some people died after that, famously, from quick eating and stuff. But the bottom line is that there's an expiation, there's an end,
right?
And there's other things, there's other stories that are associated with Tu B'Av that have something to do with that. But essentially, at the end, it comes that it's a holiday of reconnection. Like one of the stories is that the people who fought the Romans in the Bar Kokhba revolt were killed, and the Romans did not allow them to be buried in
the city of
Beitar, which is close by to here. And they were not allowed to be buried until a year later, and when then they were given the right to be reburied.
They were not just not reburied; they were just left in place where they fell.
Right, and it was a horrible thing, and it was really painful for people. Tu B'Av, they were allowed to be buried, but the beauty was when they got to these bodies, they were still whole. They had not decayed.
They were not decayed.
Now these may seem gruesome a little bit, right?
Yes.
but the what's the word, undertone, the deep message here is that there's an end to a dark time and a beginning of a time of love, a beginning of a time of return connection, of kind of reconnecting to something that had been ruptured beforehand. The last story is also a tough story, which is that the tribe of Benjamin, the Jewish people, after the tribe of Benjamin had performed a bad act, had made an oath that they wouldn't marry into the tribe of Benjamin. So that was a horrible situation, and then they realized that was a bad oath, and they were like, "How do we get around the oath?" So basically, the women, the young maidens would gather in Shiloh, and they danced around, and then the tribe of Benjamin was allowed to kind of,
make friends with some of those ladies.
Yeah, take one of those ladies without. But basically, people misunderstand that story. It's not like
meet a girl and like make a shidduch.
Right, but without the permission of the parents. Therefore, the parents wouldn't have to. What do you call it?
But the parents let their girls go to this dance.
They did, exactly. But it was
it was like a sulcha.
They were trying to get around the oath. And anyway, that was also Tu B'Av. So Tu B'Av has become in Israel. Now the beauty about Tu B'Av is that sadly our beloved Israeli brothers and sisters are oftentimes not aware of the Jewish calendar very much. That's a very painful thing for me personally. But this is one of the days that Israelis know, Tu B'Av, and it is indeed celebrated every year. And you and I got married on Tu B'Av 18 years ago.
Wow.
In Hebron,
18 to life.
18 to life, or Chai. 18 to life is our little joke. But we got married 18 years ago. Speaking of to life, l'chaim. We got married during the Second Intifada, where the Jewish people, especially places like Hebron, were under grave attack. And nobody was getting married there. We got married in Hebron. It really restarted the idea of Hebron marriage. And so I'm very proud of that.
Like weddings in Hebron.
Yeah, Hebron, that's right. Weddings at the tomb of the fathers and mothers in Hebron. And if you're considering getting married or having any other simcha, I highly recommend that post-corona,
that's right,
we'll get back to normal weddings. Although there have been
weddings, and it's actually a good place because there's a big, especially in the summertime, there's like a pretty big outdoor plaza, so you can have tables and things, and everything's outdoors.
That's right. And so that's Tu B'Av. It's a very important day to get. It's important to get into it. And I want to give you an example. In Hebron, we sadly have another sad day coming up, which is the 18th of Av, which marks the 1929 riots in which 67 Jews were murdered. But I'm saying to them, guys, we got to bring that into the 3 weeks. And not like we can do a small ceremony, but we can't.
Right. I think the 3 weeks are so heavy that it's like to come out and then to go right back in.
Right. So I told them, I said to them yesterday, Rabbi Simcha Hachbaum, one of our great tour guides and makes great videos and stuff. So he's like, okay, I'll make a video now for Tarpart for 1929. I said to him, don't do it. Make a Tu B'Av video. Make a love video. Malkah, I just want to tell you very much that I want to tell you that I love you very much.
I love you very much.
And thank you so much for getting married to me. 18 years ago in Hebron. It was very, very powerful. And may we continue. I can't wait to be on the show with you when we're celebrating our 36th wedding anniversary.
Yes, amen.
Amen. Amen.
Boy, I wonder what the world will look like then.
Well, I'll tell you, the world keeps changing. Like yesterday, as you and I were heading to town to celebrate,
Right.
we heard news that a horrific explosion ripped through the port area of Beirut,
Right.
Which is a city in
A
the
beautiful city.
It's also a nearby city. Like
Right.
people like Beirut's not far away. Okay, and they heard the explosion all the way out to Cyprus. Some people say north of Israel, but the point is, it was a horrible explosion. And why don't you tell us about what transpired there?
I'll tell you what they're reporting about
Right.
what transpired there, because as per usual here in the Middle East, nothing is a story. Like, you're not being realistic if you just like read a story and go, okay, like the something can always be different. But anyway, here is what they're saying. As of now, over 100 people, and I'm sorry to say that my guess is that it will probably be a lot more than that. More than 100 people were killed and over 4,000 people injured in what when we first saw it looked like a nuclear bomb had hit a building right by the port in Beirut.
If you saw the pictures of it, the reason she says nuclear bomb is because there was clearly visible a shock wave.
Yeah, there was like a mushroom cloud and a shock wave,
Right.
and like
it wasn't a classic mushroom cloud of a nuclear bomb, but there was
I don't
definitely
know.
a cloud.
It was mushroom shaped in its roundness.
Right, but there was a ring of, you can see it in
like
the video, of
exploding out.
a shockwave. There was a
It was
shockwave.
unbelievable. And the pictures, it's interesting because there's many videos coming out now of what's going on, what happened in the street at the time. It turns out that the Lebanese people on their beautiful seaside porches were like taking videos of what had seemed to be like a big fire that was happening and a lot of people ended up catching the explosion that occurred.
Right. Because there was a fire first.
There was a fire.
Looked
Right.
like fireworks also were kind of
We're snapping around in there.
I will soon reveal to you what
Oh, you already got the conspiracy theory.
I will soon reveal to you.
So let me just tell you what some of the facts that are being presented. Basically, they're saying that I forget what the chemical is. I think ammonium
nitrate.
Ammonium nitrate. Thank you. That a big supply, like thousands, like 2,700 tons of ammonium nitrate had been stored at this port.
Right.
That Lebanese officials in charge of the port had turned to authorities and asked them to like get rid of it or to secure it or something like that. It's stuff that's used in fertilizer.
Right.
And that they had asked to...
And in bomb making.
And in explosives, right? But okay, let's just say that it's used in fertilizer. And they had asked for help in like getting rid of or otherwise safetyifying this stuff, and that the authorities had not helped.
Right.
In that regard. And then it exploded. But basically, some kind of fire started there. And then there was an explosion. The explosion occurred very close to a massive structure of grain silos. The thing cracked open and basically poured out 85% of all the grain in Lebanon. It turns out that Lebanon is not a place that like really grows its grain.
Right.
As like America is such an amazing grain grower, and there's some other countries who are so good at growing grain that today a lot of countries import from these countries, including Israel. Israel grows grain, but it also does a lot of importing.
Russia and the United States are the famous.
Okay, I didn't know it was Russia. So, like a humongous amount of the country's like storehouses of grain has just been destroyed. But the officials are quick to say that they have enough for what they need immediately and that they'll just be importing some more grain. Also, basically, like, you saw the video of this explosion, and basically, like, the explosion just rippled back, destroying buildings, destroying all kinds of everything that was there, cars and everything. You see videos of people trying to like evacuate their loved ones on the roofs of their cars and stuff to hospitals. But one of the problems is that the hospitals, obviously, there's many hospitals in Beirut, And those hospitals were immediately overrun. But moreover, a lot of them were actually damaged in the explosion. So the hospitals are lacking electricity. They're running on like generators. There's no blood to give anybody. Reports are that they're doing like surgeries in the hallways and stuff. It's real like wartime emergency field hospital stuff.
Right.
And it's very gruesome and it's very sad.
All right, so let me tell you what Russian websites are reporting right now. They're reporting the following: that a few years ago, a Ukrainian businessman was bringing a shipment of this ammonium nitrate from either to Djibouti or from Djibouti, and he had a boat problem. And they stopped at the port of Beirut, and they found that he himself had all kinds of legal issues.
With
he
this
was
stuff?
wanted. No, just in general, he was wanted for other things. In any case, he left the cargo there, escaped to Cyprus, and they stored this cargo in that building of this ammonium nitrate. Indeed.
Right.
Above it, they started storing also some fireworks.
Oh, bad move.
Bad combo. Now, yet a third bad thing that happened, and you could there was these steel workers. They found some kind of hole in the fence surrounding the complex. They started to do some kind of steel work there without checking what's in the building. Anyway, sparks flew literally
And hit the fireworks.
And you could see that there's like a fireworks thing in the beginning. The fireworks then set off this ammonium nitrate. Now, the reason I say this is because other conspiracy theorists would like to say that like Israel or something like that would do this. I said
you could see it immediately.
Yeah,
you could see it immediately from the
because
bomb that it wasn't Israel.
Right, but there's a lot of tensions right now with Israel in the north. There's been some Hezbollah operatives that were killed in the last few days trying to infiltrate Israel and plant bombs. So there's a lot of tension, but this had nothing to do with it, and it's obvious. The reason you're saying what you're saying is because everybody knows Israel or even the United States or any other actor who would be willing to, hit.
Let's say we were targeting targets inside Beirut.
Right, like nobody's going to allow for a huge building to explode with so much so-called collateral
It's just not
damage.
how we do it.
Yeah, it's
not how
we
do stuff. We do targeted strikes for better or for worse.
Right.
But that's how we do it because we're always concerned with the loss of innocent life.
This was a horrible accident. It seems, of course.
Right.
But what's
and a series
sad,
of like horrible things that are happening in Lebanon today.
Yeah, Lebanon.
It's getting altered.
And one long time ago, my friend and one of my mentors, Jeremy Gimpel, told me he came up. He said, land for peace. You give us our land, and we'll give you peace. Right? Like, let us control Lebanon, and we'll bring a more peaceful. Let Israel, in all the prophecies, including the original boundaries and including in Ezekiel's prophecies, Israel goes more north than it is today. And I say that,
who knows? Who knows what's being said?
I'm just saying, economic problems out there. We have Hezbollah. We have bad things. We can help. Like, for example, take it more political science. So you see how Chinese are now today taking over different ports all over the world. They're managing it. I'm saying, let us manage Lebanon. We'll manage Lebanon. We'll help us. Israel will manage Lebanon. It'll be further up north, and we'll. It's such an important seaside area, all the way up to Damascus.
Well, we used to have fingers in Lebanon.
Well, yeah, but we never asserted any kind of claim or sovereignty over it. And I'm not.
Israel can barely assert sovereignty over the stuff that it should have no problem asserting sovereignty over. I don't know how we're going to start asserting sovereignty over Lebanon.
I agree with you. I'm just throwing it out there that in this process where Lebanon has really from the 70s, it used to be a wonderful town. Beirut used to be a wonderful town.
You can see from before this explosion that it looks like a lovely, from above anyway, it looks like a lovely place with these big, tall skyscraper apartment buildings and beautiful ocean and, lots of industry happening.
My point is Hezbollah's bad. The economy is bad. Explosions, mismanagement.
Israel offered, by the way, humanitarian support to Lebanon after this explosion. And no one's saying what has happened as a result. The reports indicate that Lebanon will probably turn down the support. But my guess is what that means is that Lebanon will totally take the support, but just no one's going to talk about it.
Right. And I think you're right. I think you're exactly right about that. Speaking
So
of...
anyway, but I do want to, of course, wish my sincere condolences to the thousands of innocent people living in Beirut who just wanted to go to work and drink their coffee and are now stuck in a just unthinkable situation. And we're not even talking, Yishai, about the homelessness or the loss of business. The country has been going through like a real economic downturn and the loss of their currency, the drop in their currency. And, Syrian kind of insertion of itself into Lebanon all the time, and Russia also. And it's just a country which has been slipping and slipping and slipping. I'm saying. And now there's with the coronavirus on top of everything, it's like people have lost their jobs and their livelihoods, and it's such a blow.
I agree. First thing I want to second I want to second what you just voiced, which is really praying for the health of the people of Beirut and Lebanon in general. But I just want to add to that, which is like Israel does not have a consciousness of being a bigger player around here. And I'm trying to help that consciousness grow.
It keeps itself small and meek.
Right. It's just it kind of just
because I think it's so concerned also all the time, Yishai, with this like image that has been imposed upon it as like an aggressor that's like a hungry, a Jewish, greedy country that has...
Chinese people have no Jews there, because no Jews living in China other than businessmen in Shanghai or the old Jews in Kaifeng.
China is really formidable, and so people do not want to mess with China. Formidable. And incidentally, there's plenty of people.
I like that word, formidable. I like these words. See, formidable, fierce.
Yeah, but you don't want to be formidable the way China's formidable.
No, but I like the word formidable. It's an attitude. It's an attitude. You know what I mean? It's an attitude. I think that China has a lot of self. You may not like what they do. I don't like necessarily what they do, but and I don't like a lot of things that they do. But I like the attitude of we want to be big. We want to be strong.
I don't. I don't like the attitude of China. And I'm saying that as a real outsider. China's outside my wheelhouse, but I will say that we're not even remotely close to there, so this is such a philosophical conversation. But I don't like Israel shouldn't be like China.
Okay, but I'm saying like this. You see, when you make these comparisons, immediately the way we think in the kind of Trumpian era that we live in, where everything is like insta, like angry,
right?
Insta, I'm saying
controversy.
Yeah, insta, like I can't do that.
You said that. You said
you could compare you to China. I'm saying, look, Israel is a regional power.
Right.
It's the most important military and economic power in the region today.
Right, and it's a good guy.
Right, and it's a good guy. And more of I said this to people don't get what I'm saying. A bigger Israel means more rights for more people, more safety for more people, more prosperity for more people. That's what it means.
That is absolutely true.
And I'm saying a bigger Israel is the way to think about things. And I don't mean a land-grabbing Israel. I mean a bigger player in this region that helps set things a little bit straighter, gives people more rights, more hospitals, more roads.
Right. If Syria's already in there and Russia's already in there, so it's a country that likes like a host to come or it likes to host like a country who will come and direct it.
That's right. And I'm saying let us help manage more of the area that's anyway Eretz Yisrael. Let's just be real about things.
It is.
And I don't mean like
it is the biblical land of Israel.
It is. It absolutely is. And so, and
Tripoli, it's more north, which means probably more temperate climate.
Exactly. See, I knew you were going to go there.
I like me some snow.
That's right. Malkah likes a little bit of a cooler temperature.
Yep.
And I respect that. I was looking recently, and I haven't explored it deeply yet. If anybody wants to write to me about this and talk to me if they have a deep knowledge about it, or send me a video or anything, or any writing about it, which is Ezekiel's prophecy. Now, Yechezkel has got some stuff in there that is unusual. Okay, it is not exactly in line with everything that you know and you think you know. Okay, the boundaries of Eretz Yisrael according to Yechezkel are different.
Really?
Things are different. Yeah, things are different. And somebody showed this to me, and I've become very intrigued by it. And I want to learn more about it. I really do. I want to understand. He has a different third Beit HaMikdash, looks very different than the first and second Beit HaMikdash. He's got cool stuff. I don't know enough about it. I would love to learn more about it. That's one of the things I'd like to do in this period, the Corona time. But in any case, one thing is for sure I could tell you is that it's way further north It's got
What is further north?
The
borders of Israel.
the borders
according to
of
Ezekiel.
the so-called quote unquote state of Israel. This because the Ezekiel vision is pre-state-ish exactly. Although one could argue that the Davidic dynasty is indeed just a regular border state, like we understand it today, a Westphalian state. Anyway, not important. Let's get to just one more point. I think that dovetails very nicely with what we're talking about right now. You've engaged in Twitter recently,
Right.
With people. You've been trying to explain to one gentleman who's behaving nicely on Twitter, which is
such a joy,
which is a rarity.
Yeah, it's like it's a fun to like. A lot of people get on Twitter to discuss.
Actually,
things.
you and I were on Twitter yesterday, and we were at the Shuk. The Shuk Machane Yehuda, the famous outdoor market in Jerusalem. And you and I were going out for our anniversary. We went to the famous, awesome restaurant called Hatch.
Yes.
Where we had
Frosé.
And unspeakably large, delicious meats. Okay, including a way oversized corn dog and
corn
a
dog
absurdly
with some good mustard.
Yummy, meaty corn beef sandwich.
Yishai, you seem to be drooling.
I salivated just a tad there. Sorry. Excuse me. I know that's not very radiophonic. But while we were there was music playing, and we heard that famous Jewish artist playing that famous Jewish song.
Yeah.
Stevie Wonder.
Not quite.
Playing.
Famous, yes.
Famous, yes.
Jewish,
that's right.
not as much.
Yeah, but Stevie Wonder.
But still awesome.
And Stevie Wonder, God bless him, who has great songs, but his famous song, I Just Called to Say I Love You, right? And
so we put out a funny video on Twitter.
We put out a funny video on Twitter, and we really were singing it in the Shuk. So
yeah, it's doing pretty well.
Yeah. I just called to say how much I care. Okay, so that was really fun. But you are on more serious Twitter. You have been discussing with a gentleman who is behaving decently in his verbiage,
right?
And
which, by the way, is, as they say in Hebrew, lo muvan me'elav, right. Not like should be taken for granted on the Twitter platform.
All right, so go ahead. I want to finish this up in 3 minutes. Keep
okay. So basically, we just had a conversation. Basically, he saw our video, and he said, "I'm against the settlements, but I would like to hear why Malkah Fleisher and Yishai Fleisher support them from their point of view." And then I was just very happy that he
said it in such an open way.
Because it's unbelievable how people will treat you. They'll call you like an idiot, an occupier, stupid, racist, out of nowhere, right?
Yeah.
People you've never met who don't know almost anything about you at all, right. Including your views. So it's nice to not be treated like that. And then he asked what I think the solution to the conflict is, where my personal values stem from. And I started to talk about a little bit kind of what you were alluding to, Yishai, which is that us being weak, Israel being weak, is not doing anyone any favors in this region, us or the Palestinians or anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And that it's bad energy, I told him, for Jews to carve up our special land.
Right.
But that I do believe that Israel can be a place with upward mobility for all people who live here, including citizens and residents.
Mm-hmm.
So then he said, what would happen to Palestinians who live in Judea and Samaria?
Right.
And I said, that's a good question. And I said that I think that really the first step is to just say out loud that this is our land.
Right.
And once you say out loud, this is our land, then you allow the other side, if you will, to react to that and to say what they think. Because right now we haven't said anything almost. We might apply sovereignty, but it's all very amorphous. But let's say we're taking this land. This is our land. And now what do you guys think? Right? And then things will become a little bit clearer. So then he was talking to me about residency versus citizenship. And basically he wanted to know what everyone wants to know, which is, are we making Palestinians full citizens? So I said to him, did you know that they had a citizenship? Because he's they're disenfranchised, right? They can't be people with no country. So I'm did you know that they had citizenship once in Jordan? Jordan had given them citizenship. Some of them were originally Jordanian and had citizenship. And that it was revoked by King Hussein
1988.
In 1988. And that is what caused their disenfranchisement. So if you want to undisenfranchise these people, just revert them back to their previous state, which is Jordanian citizens. So he's like, but what if Jordan won't do that? So I'm like, well, what do you mean if Jordan won't do that? Then I have to do that? Like, because they stuck them here for us to deal with, so then it is now my obligation to deal with them. When I say stuck them here, I'm not trying to minimize the real truth that there are real people who want to live real lives and like want to raise their families. I'm not trying to chatelize them or anything like that. I recognize that these are real people. Anyway, so I'm like, if Jordan dispossessed them, it's Jordan's job to make them undispossessed again.
Right.
It's not Israel's job. And if Jordan fails to do its job, then it's just part of the same old thing where the Arab world, including Jordan, uses these people to weaken Israel and ultimately destroy it. He says he disagrees with me, basically. And he says the burden is on Israel because we'll be the ones controlling the land, that Jordan used to control the land. And that's why they had citizenship. And now that Jordan took away their citizenship and we're going to control the land, then we have to give them citizenship. And I said, we don't owe them that. Meaning to say, like, yet again, it's like just another way of you placing the responsibility on us. These are people who were Jordanians. A lot of them came in, by the way. There were people who were living farther into what is today called Jordan, and they came out to settle this new space. We could do what the Arab lands did, which is just say you're out of here, right? But because we're very, very nice and we don't feel like doing stuff like that, if you want, what you could do is you could stay and not even have to go, but you keep being a Jordanian. So he still didn't like that. And I'm like, well, what if you leave your...
You gave a parable.
Yeah, I gave a metaphor, okay? And it is just a metaphor, all right? And I said, if you leave your child on my doorstep and walk away, who is responsible for this child? You are, right? You had a kid. You left it at my house. And then you walked away. It is not my job. Now, I am a good person. So I'm, of course, going to like take in this baby and I'm going to feed it and make sure it has its basic needs, right? But like, I didn't do the crime. You did the crime. And just because you abandoned your child at my house does not make me the new legal guardian of this child. I'm not infantilizing the Palestinians, okay? Like he kind of wanted to accuse me. But the point is that I find that, and he's like, well, but they don't identify as Jordanians. They identify as Palestinians. I'm like, why is everyone always so concerned with how they self-identify? But no one ever asks us how we self-identify. Right. No one ever says, like, what do you guys want? Right. Like, what are your goals that we have to ensure, like, get met?
That's a great parable, Malkah. I really like that a lot. I just want to add one tiny thing, which is enfranchisement. That whole language is such a Western language. Literally, there is not one Arab country where Arabs have a vote or a vote that counts. They have some places they have a vote, but it's totally
meaningless.
Yeah. So like in the 22 Arab countries, it just doesn't work that way. It just does not work that way in terms of enfranchisement. It just doesn't work that way. It works in terms of strong men and military leaders and controlling factions or controlling tribes and tribesmen and elders and all kinds of other systems, but it doesn't have any enfranchisement.
I guess there is some democracy that happens.
There is a system of governance,
right, of making your voice heard,
right. But it's not what you understand.
What
as
you get may not be.
Right, it's not
what
not because the state gives you the right to vote as a citizen and all
right,
these
and
Western
it's
concepts.
all this like Greco-democratic system where it's like everything is exactly how you voted
which is
for.
Fine, but like sometimes I find that the myopic way that people understand the world, that they think that it's all one system. There's only one system by which people rule themselves. It's just not like that. And so I think people should a little bit expand their horizons. Yishai Fleisher, I want to wish you a fabulous Tu B'Av Sameach.
You too, Yishai. Mazal Tov.
I feel the Tu B'Avness. I feel it.
Thank HaShem we got married.
Baruch HaShem. And I want to,
May all the Jewish people be happily married.
Yeah.
And all the non-Jewish people too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to wish people a good coupling, good success with having and raising children. And I know that there's a lot of challenges out there, and a lot of us, every one of us has our pekalach as we say in Jewish. Okay, we have our Pekalach. I just want to bless everybody out there with success, and today is a day to overcome all of those. As I told you, those stories. None of those stories of Tu B'Av were like, yay! It's not like they're all like, ouch. There's like an ouch element in the stories of like what is Tu B'Av. It's like,
well, but today, if you walk around in Jerusalem, Yishai, for Tu B'Av, you see simple, sweet, happy
yes, and all that
celebrations.
And all that is
love.
after 2,000 years of exile, of destruction, of persecution, of Holocaust, of seeing our beloved Jerusalem in ruins and on fire. And today, Tu B'Av is something different.
Right.
Okay, but it's all wrapped up in what this day is really about. And I just want to bless everybody with all that. Oh, I also want to say before we go, Malkah, a lot of people have written to me about the Aliyah Revolution CD.
Oh, have they?
A lot of people. And people are really excited about it. So I just want to say to everybody, if you're interested in the Aliyah Revolution CD, write me an email, Yishai@YishaiFleisher.com or Yishai@thelandofisrael.com. And we'll start the conversation. We'll get you CDs. We have found a treasure trove. I talked about it last week. 500 old school, awesome. I mean, I'm telling you, it's one of the greatest CDs ever made. Really, but like, you don't understand the artwork, the music, the bands.
Well, we put a lot of love into it.
We put a lot of love into it. It is something so special. So if you have a chance right now to get the Aliyah Revolution CD, you will be very, very, very lucky. So please write me an email. YishaiFleisher.com, Yishai@thelandofisrael.com, Yishai@Hebron.com if you want.
No,
okay?
don't start messing them
No,
up.
I'm just telling you, I have different hats. Different hats. If you know me as the Hebron hat, B'vakasha. Yishai Fleisher, B'vakasha, Land of Israel, B'vakasha. We have ways of we can communicate on any way which you want, okay? I self-identify as all of those. In any case, lots of blessings from the land of blessings. More great stuff. Rabbi Mike is next, so stay tuned. Malkah Fleisher, Shabbat Shalom, Mazal Tov, and Happy Tu B'Av.
Bye.
Hey everybody, this is Jeremy Gimpel. Have you heard about the Land of Israel Fellowship? We started about 1 month ago, and people from all over the world, 24 countries, have joined. We meet live every Sunday, and the video session is recorded and then broadcast to all the members. And it's an exclusive group. It's a group that's focused on learning. We're focused on praying together. We're focused on growing together. And it has been one of the biggest blessings in my life. And we have people from New Zealand to Australia, Alaska, Hawaii, Hong Kong, Jews, Christians. We have a Buddhist. We have one Muslim that's joined. We have people from so many different backgrounds, languages, and cultures. And we are literally creating a virtual house of prayer for all nations. And it is truly marvelous. And so if you want more information about that, please visit www.thelandofisrael.com/fellowship. And I would love to see you next Sunday.
All right, everybody, shalom, and welcome to the Yishai Fleisher Show. Live right now on Facebook, YouTube, and on our podcast, which is the Yishai Fleisher Show on the Land of Israel Network, and throughout all the normative channels that you can find your podcasts in. Shalom and welcome. This is part 2 of the podcast, which Malkah Fleisher was on first, and we are joined today by our beloved Rabbi Mike Foyer. Rav Mike, shalom and welcome to the program.
Oh, shalom, Yishai. It's good to see you.
It's great to see you, and it's fun to be live with you. Because we're actually post the 9 days, post the 3 weeks, and we're right now celebrating a very important day, which is Tu B'Av.
That's right.
Which is Jewish Love Day, or maybe
Unity Day.
What did you want to call it? I was going to say Jewish Unity Day.
Yeah, I mean that's really, if you look at the sources in the Gemara, what this day is about in terms of the tribes being able to marry each other once again after the sort of declaration in the desert that women had to stick with their tribes that they inherited, in terms of removing the barriers between, the northern kingdom and Jerusalem, even in terms of bringing the tribe of Benjamin back in. I mean, you know the stories, and we could keep going. They all have an element of unity. Even the end of the decree against the generation of the wilderness, in its own ways, is an expression of Jewish unity, because it meant that kol ha'am kulo omed chayim hayom, right? That everybody who's here now is alive. We're doing this together. There's nobody here who isn't part of the story any longer.
Well, let's focus on two of those. First is reunification that you talked about, and it was an evil king of Israel. His name was Yeravam ben Nevat, or Jeroboam, a guy whose English name was better than his Hebrew name, Jeroboam.
Come
Come on, it's a great name, Jeroboam. Okay, and Jeroboam, Yeravam, was a very powerful king, and one of the things that he set out to do was to actually create an alternative religion, what I call
an alternative point of pilgrimage, but it was definitely
more than that.
Elo Elokecha Yisrael. I mean, he was saying these are your gods, Israel, in the same way that was said about the calf in the wilderness. I mean,
but that's exactly the most powerful kind of alternative religion, which says I'm not an alternative religion. I am the same old. We hear that all the time. He set up two golden calves, one in Beit El, one in Dan. Serving a golden calf and calling that Judaism is not Judaism. It's what I call hashtag my Judaism.
You're hitting my pet peeve. There was no Judaism. The Tazov. There were no Jews. It was Am Yisrael. There was the Mikdash, and we had a covenant with a Kodesh Baruch Hu, right? And so like what's happening here was not a good thing. It was idolatry. It was a chet gadol. But I don't like the word religion in this context. It's an anachronism.
Do you agree with me that it was not the covenantal way to serve the God of Israel as is set down in the Torah? Jeroboam may have called it a Judaism, but it was not the way that it was supposed to be, right?
Yes, and it's very different if you look into the Book of Kings than what happened under Achav. When the Baal began to supplant the God of Israel. It's actually an important relationship there, which if you read, which I think you have, our books on the Age of Prophecy series, the Lamp of Darkness goes into this, as does the Key of Rain quite extensively, that there is a difference between telling Am Yisrael, you're still worshiping the God who brought you out of Egypt, you're just doing it here as opposed to Jerusalem, which opens the gateway for, now here's a new God, we call him Baal, the storm god.
But that's what happens when you start to create an alternative. Things start to seep in. Once you break down the barriers, you're not really worshiping the God of Israel as was prescribed. Prescribed. As was
corrected. Commanded.
Let's go as commanded. Proscribed is actually the opposite of prescribed, right?
Yeah, this would be
right, prescribed. Yeah, that's right. So he Jeroboam starts that process. Now, one of the things that he does is that he not only does he create an alternative to Jerusalem, to the not only does he create different holidays, not only does he create a different temple in these two places, one in Beit El, where the Dream of the Ladder took place, and one in Dan, a very beautiful place on the water, on the rivulets.
Also a core place of idolatrous worship.
Right, a cultic site. He also realizes that that's not enough to create an alternative. You also have to have a push and pull, or in this case, a push and block, which is I will block you from getting to Jerusalem by setting up barriers, either physical barriers or people guards on the way. You will be deprived of that way of worship and that connectivity. And once you're deprived long enough, and I give you an alternative, you'll come over to this side.
There's a real message, I think, for the world in which we live today, which is that Yeravam was pushed to this. Remember, he was appointed by God. It's important to note that as much as he became a tremendous source of sin in Am Yisrael, he was anointed by the Navi Achia Shiloni. He was chosen by God to take the 10 northern tribes and make his own kingdom. Where he went wrong was his ego. The Midrash says that when God invited him, he said, "Come walk with me and David, King David, in Garden of Eden." You remember what Yeravam's answer was?
Not if he's in front.
Right. Who gets to go first? And this is such an important message for us today. Is that our leadership has lost sight of the fact that unifying Am Yisrael is the greatest source of strength that we have. Instead, now it's about mi berosh, who's going to be in charge, and what segment, what sector of our society can I incite and excite and etc. to get behind me to gain the power I want. It's tragic, and it's leading literally to sin, if not on the scale of the calf of Dan and Beersheba, Dan and Beit El. Like it certainly ain't good what's happening.
Okay, I like that you're taking it to a political place, and I will take it to a more spiritual place vis-a-vis COVID-19. There are
Blame
times.
the calf.
What'd you say? I missed that.
I said blame COVID on the calf. I could see that
Blame-
like a
Well,
t-shirt.
I was going to say that there are times where people are stopped from coming to Jerusalem for one reason or another. There's a blockage out there. It's a it's a type of cholesterol that blocks your blood flow. You're not coming to Yerushalayim, and when that gets removed, and you can come back to Yerushalayim, then you understand how much you needed it, how much you missed it, how much it was important. And that's what Tu B'Av is partially about, which is that blockage of idolatry, of bad ideas, of alternatives was there. And today, Jews all over the world, and also people who love Israel from all over the world right now, there's a lot of people that are writing to me on Facebook, including Andrea, who is trying to marry an Israeli guy. She's asking today on Tu B'Av she says, I got to get home. And other people as well on the Facebook page, they're blocked from coming to the land of Israel right now, and they're asking for a Tu B'Av. They're asking for a way to reconnect with that land again, with Jerusalem again. So that's one narrative of Tu B'Av, and another one which other one did you mention that I wanted to talk about?
Benjamin, the tribes, or the Dor Midbar, the generation of the wilderness.
Right, the generation of we talked about this with Mike Fleisher, which is the generation of the desert. They stopped dying on this day. They realized that the curse was lifted. That the
details. You guys give the details in the earlier one. I mean, it's
we talked about how
graves every night and.
Right, so let's just describe it for the audience. So you have these Jews who thought that they were within the age range of the 20 to 60-year-olds who were supposed to die in the desert and not enter the land of Israel. On the 9th of Av, which commemorated that night, which they cried and rejected the land of Israel, that night they would die every single year of the 38 years that were remaining. They dug holes for themselves and would lie down in them. They would lie down in their holes, and then in the morning, some of them would get up and some of them wouldn't. And those that got up knew that they had yet another year of reprieve. Maybe they could pray more, be with their family more, reconnect, but maybe they would die the next year after that. And they kept doing that until the final 40th year, which they lie down on the 9th of Av, and lo and behold, they got up. And they said, what's that? Every single one of them got up. And they thought to themselves, well, we must have done the math wrong. Remember, they didn't have the same kind of calculations that we have today. And they
tell me the 9th and the 10th day of the month just from looking at the moon.
you can't really exactly tell. And in any case, they kept lying down on the 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th. But on the 15th, on Tu B'Av, the 15th of Av, they saw the full moon.
Right.
They saw that full moon, and they knew that it was over. That shall we say, the curse was lifted. They were within.
It was revoked.
It was revoked, or the time it was completed, and therefore also all of us sometimes we're stuck in certain loops in life. We really feel like we can't break out of things. We dig our own grave sometimes. That's a sad thing. And then suddenly something opens up, a door opens up. Sometimes it could be nothing more than somebody recommended a yoga class for you, and you're like, you know what? I just met a guy named Aaron who's in my men's yoga class, what I call Moga, and he told me, he said to me, I was walking around like this for years, and I kept trying to straighten myself up, and I found this class, and now I'm straightened out again. I just mean to say, sometimes something opens up in life, an opportunity. You meet somebody, a new friend, a mate, a new way. You read a book that helped you break through. And speaking of books to break through, I really believe that if you want one book and you want a shortened version of it all about what life is all about, just read the Torah portion of Ekev. The Torah portion of Ekev that we're going to talk about, that's the one. That's the one. You need to, if you want to know who are you and who is God and what he wants from you and how you should think about him, that's the shortened version. God bless. What's that?
I said it's pretty jam-packed, yeah.
It's jam-packed, and I say this with the utmost respect to everybody from Rabbi Akiva to the Rambam to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. They're all amazing, but if you want,
they would all agree with you that you should start with Ekev.
Right, just read this Torah portion. But before we get to that Torah portion, by the way, Alice Gross says planning to come for a long time. She's davening to make it a reality to come back to the land of Israel. And she says, remember when you were here in Baltimore? Boy, that was many years ago. And the rabbi that I was with in Baltimore is a rabbi that we both know, Rabbi Elon and Rebbitzin Rivka Adler.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who live today in Gush Etzion. That's where I was in Baltimore many years ago. Listen, before we go on to the Torah portion, I just want to talk to you about an amazing story that's happening right now. And that is the story that, here's the New York Times headline. In a moment of, the first paragraph, in a moment of triumph that India's Hindu nationalists had worked towards for years, Prime Minister Modi on Wednesday set the ceremonial cornerstone for a Hindu temple on the site of a destroyed mosque in Ayodhya. Okay? So the Prime Minister of India is going to be putting up a big Hindu temple on the site of a former mosque, which was destroyed in the 90s by Hindu nationalists.
Which, as far as I know, by the way, itself was built on top of a Hindu sacred site. I'm not certain on that, but I'm fairly sure that is the case. I mean, you got to remember, there's always more layers to the story.
It literally, right? Literally and narratively. Of course, this is very, very reminiscent of stuff that's happening in our region. Let's just recall a similar phenomenon that's happening in Turkey, not so far away from us, in the famous Hagia Sophia Church, built by the Byzantines, a beautiful, one of the world's greatest structures, and has been, from the time of Ataturk, has remained like a museum.
Yes,
and
not like a museum, it has been a museum.
Right, a museum, right, in a museum status. But now, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who is the head of Turkey, he has kind of changed the status and also has put some flags on it and put Muslim features into it, and is now turning it into an active mosque as well. I don't think they're killing necessarily immediately the museum, the church museum aspect of it, but turning it into a mosque, an active mosque. I have been to Turkey, and the Constantinople aspect of Istanbul is completely erased. You barely ever see anything.
Capital of Eastern Christianity.
Right, you'll never know that. You'll never know that it existed like that for centuries. And so that's an interesting story. And of course, we also have our Temple Mount in Jerusalem, which is the home of two Jewish temples. Then later on became a site of a Roman a cultic site.
A temple to Zeus.
A temple to Zeus, actually, I think to Jupiter.
Sorry.
Right. But similar, as I was taught.
Same, they just changed his name.
Right, as I was taught by Dr. Feldman in Yeshiva University, Jupiter is Zeus Pater. Zeus is the father. That's what he taught us. In any case, now and after that, it became at different times. Sometimes it was a church.
The Al-Aqsa Mosque began as a church, like the Hagia Sophia.
Right, and at other points became, or at the different times of history had different church mosque, and today it is a mosque. And now we're back, the Jews, and we're clamoring and yearning for a temple in Jerusalem.
Well,
and there are
a few of us are.
Some of us are clamoring for a temple in Jerusalem. If the New York Times article would be written, it would say Jewish nationalists,
crazy Jews want to murder goats on site of mosque. Crazy Jews. Wait, I got it better. Crazy Jews abuse animals.
Wait, don't forget crazy apartheid Jews. Occupation. Nationalists.
Facilitates crazy nationalist Jews torturing animals on Muslim site. There we go. We got it. Send in the editorial now. Sorry.
I have to tell you, this Modi story is. I want to look more into it, but it is definitely indicative of the tensions between Islam, and Hinduism in India, Indian nationalist Hinduism,
Long
and
story there.
right, it's a long story, which at some point, by the way, let's not forget, also caused a humongous millions and millions of people of population transfer into the split between
Estimates.
India and Pakistan.
Mhm.
So it was a humongous thing.
Hundreds of thousands of deaths. Well, maybe that might be an exaggeration in actual death, but was wrapped up with massive destruction and war. It was not a,
Right.
because like the post World War II transfer of German-speaking non-German nationals out of Eastern Europe was a little bit more peaceful. It wasn't quite the same explosion, but of course that came after World War II. So in all fairness, they kind of got it out of their system first.
But let's get to the point here, which is we have a country which is claiming that this is their religious spot, and they're willing to build a Hindu temple on what they consider a Hindu holy site.
Well, first they had riots and destroyed the mosque. Meaning, you don't miss that there's a pattern of relationship there, which is like one of the archetypes that's studied in sort of conflict and peace sort of studies. When I was at Tufts in grad school, looked at the model of Muslim-Hindu relations and the periodic riots around these very sites, and how they follow a very specific pattern, and very violent. But it all comes down to basically whose holy site is it really?
Right. Now, if we were like the Jews, the Israelis would be like a regular Middle Eastern people, once we would conquer the Temple Mount, what we would do is we would get rid of that mosque and put in our temple and say, hey, you put your temple on our mosque. You suggested that we were a defeated religion by putting your important site on our important site, and thereby basically you basically defeated us and defeated the God of Israel by the God of the Quran, the God of Muhammad. Okay, I'm talking in Middle East talk.
But it's actually important to remember that actually in many ways they saved the site from absolute desecration and destruction, because the Christians had turned it into a trash heap. It was the Muslims that revived it as a holy site. So it's not as simple as what you're saying, I think. Because remember that our vision is Beiti Fila Yikra L'Kol, right? So the fact that the Muslims find sanctity in this site is itself both problematic and important.
Right, and I agree with you. I said if we were a regular Middle Eastern people, that's the way we would react. That's the normal way. By the way, I just want to mention that a commenter right now on our live stream, Binyamin, says, speaking of Turkey, I highly suggest watching The Last Ottoman on Netflix. It's a great documentary war film that tells the story of the fall of Constantinople due to the Ottoman Empire, or at the hands of the Ottoman Empire, and Mehmet the Conqueror. Okay, that's just a piece of information that's useful. In any case, I think it's an interesting story in India, and India has today a pretty tight relationship with Israel. We share a lot of things. One, we share a kind of ancient peoples. That's one aspect. Another one, an ancient people thing. That's right. I think there should be an ancient people club. I really do. I think we should really constantly be talking about ancient peoples.
White man need not apply.
Or, if you go back to your, ancient place, like if you're some kind of, Viking conqueror.
Only.
Okay. And
Germanic
then,
welcome.
That's right. Like you have to feel yourself an ancient people. That's one. And two is a love for technology. And three, a problem with Islam as a factor, a political factor in their lives. If you speak
four there.
What's my fourth one?
Arms industry.
Arms industry. That's right. By the way, there's another one. There's another one. There's also another one. There's a fifth one, which is Israelis simply like India because of Indian spirituality.
Spiritual vibe thing, for sure. Not just Israelis, Jews in general. I mean, I don't know what the percentage is, but there's a large chunk of Buddhists in the United States that are American Jews.
That's right, and we have even a concept in Judaism called Jubus, right? That's Jews that just have a tendency and an interest in Buddhism and in Eastern thinking. I myself count myself amongst people who have an interest in Eastern stuff. I don't deny that. I mean, it informs my Judaism. It informs my Judaism. Speaking of my Judaism, which is a term I don't like so much.
I know you don't. I was a little shocked by the
right, because we do shape the way our subjective eyes shape the way we understand things. But there's a difference between being within the box and outside the box. I think that's
true. And what I find is there's even more profound difference when you accept the fact that you're just doing it the way you want to because that's how you want, and when you try to sort of justify that by making ideological arguments about how that's the way it's supposed to be. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have any problem if someone wants to say, this is how I do my Judaism. Like, okay, I may agree, I may not agree. But don't then tell me, and this is the authentic version.
Right.
Sorry,
that's
folks.
Right. That's right. I've dubbed the inauthentic effort to what's the word? Culturally appropriate Judaism. I call that hashtag my Judaism. That's when I say that this Judaism is Judaism, and what you're pointing out is no, don't culturally appropriate. By the way, do you ever notice that the people who use terms like cultural appropriation are the number one cultural appropriators? Do you ever notice that? I've always surprised that sometimes the so-called left will be the greatest example of the things that they preach against.
Well, I mean, certainly, I'll tell you this, is that the one culture that's been completely okay to appropriate since the first century of the Common Era is Judaism.
Right. Isn't that weird?
Our culture is up for grabs. You go ahead and try to reclaim the word ghetto. Go for that one.
Okay. All right. Let's go to the Torah portion of Ekev, which is chapter 8 in the book of Deuteronomy, book of Dvarim. Excuse me. I'll start with verse number 3.
Well, you want to give a chapter on that, or just
what's that?
You want to give a chapter on that for people?
Chapter 8, verse number 3.
Skip the whole first chapter, dude. Oh, it's my favorite.
Yeah, there's a lot of great stuff, but I'll let it go. And I'll even skip part of this verse and just go to Leman hodiacha. God will inform you. Ki lo al alechem levado yechia adam. For not on bread alone shall man live. Rather, ki al kol motza pi HaShem yechia adam. Rather, all that comes from the mouth of God shall man live. This has become a kind of idiom in Israel and the Jewish people. Lo alalechem milvado yechia adam. Man doesn't live by bread alone. It's not just sustenance. It's not just like give me shelter and give me sustenance. There's more to that. And the way the verse wants to say it is, it's what God is God is putting out into this world. But another way to understand it is meaning. Man needs meaning. Man needs more than he's not just an animal that needs to eat at the end. And that's why the word Adam is there. A human being needs more. Maybe an animal can suffice with sustenance, but there's more that a person needs, and it's going to come from God. It's not going to come from science. It's not going to come from alternative my Judaism religions. It's going to come from the Word of God.
Well, I mean, there's two things there. First of all, the second part first. When it says "Ki al kol motza pi HaShem yechia adam," is that it can come from science. It can come from all kinds of stuff, as long as one sees that all that stuff that you're recognizing is motza pi HaShem. Mm-hmm. Of course, physics and Buddhism and New Age philosophy all come from God. It's if you recognize them as such, then they can connect to the other half, which is that this isn't just a distinction being made between sort of like bare bones life and a life of purpose and meaning. This is an argument for what the definition of life is. Life is not sustenance. If you want to be alive, then the primary frame for actually living is recognizing everything comes from God. And that enters you into a different category, we can see it, by the way, throughout Devarim. I'm not, because I don't have the verses at my fingertips, I'm not going to drag you through it, but I can promise you can demonstrate and keep your eye out as you read further in Devarim that it's oftentimes that God is called life. There are places where it is put forward, as we're seeing here, that there's a different thing. That people who think that what life is the sort of sustenance orientation, not those, by the way, who are forced into that by their circumstance. That's a very important part of this context. The context here is that God sustained us in the wilderness with manna, meaning this is not a poverty. That's not my point. Yes, you can, God forbid, be forced into knowing that life means having enough calories to put in your mouth. But if that's not the case and God is providing for you, then the challenge is, do you know what life is? It's a completely different definition being put forward.
Well, that dovetails beautifully with chapter 8, verse 10, very famous verse. Ve'achalta, you shall eat. Ve'savata, you shall be satiated. Uberachta et Hashem Elokecha, and bless Hashem your God al haaretz hatova asher natan lach, on the good land which He has given you. I think it's a double entendre there, which is you could bless Him for the good land that He has given you, or bless Him on as you are sitting on the good land that He's given you. The halachic meaning of the verse is that you have to, after eating bread, after having a meal, you have to take the time to actually thank God and actively do that. And the rabbis tell us this is as we say, mitzvah doraita. It's a positive Torah-based commandment to bless God after being satiated, after eating a real meal. But it's also exactly what you just said, which is, it's like you ate the food. Again, it's not about just sustenance. Okay, look at me, I'm an animal. Here I found something to eat. No. By the way, bread is also not something that is found in nature in a raw form. You have to create it. You have to bring it out. It's got to be refined. It's got to be baked. What's the word? Crushed. The wheat has to. Well, before that, it has to turn into flour, ground, sifted, baked. The whole spiel, the whole shebang.
Oh, food the pot. If you learn the Mishnah, right?
Bread is a beautiful thing. By the way, I've mentioned this to you before. Recently, I'm not like a big foodie. So just not a big foodie. That's just not my thing. Although, like anybody else, I enjoy good food. It's just it's not something I don't think too much about it. But recently, there's a store here in Gush Etzion called Pat B'Melach, which is a bakery, and they have like really excellent bread, like good bread, like with stuff in it. I like rye. Good bread. When you eat that stuff, you're like, wow, this is bread. This is what we're talking about here.
There's no Wonder Bread here. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not, and then you're like, oh, I get why the Bible's talking so much about it. But anyway, you eat, you're satiated. And this is something that every Gentile, non-Jew that's listening to this program, every person can accept into their heart. If you have the formula of Orthodox Judaism, what we say after eating bread, or if you don't, anybody that's listening to this program can understand that when you're satiated, and you could easily just be like, oh, look at me, and just loosen your belt, that was great. You take a second and you thank God for the gift of being satiated, of being protected, of living in a good land, which is this beautiful earth. And certainly if you have the merit to live in the land of Israel, it's like, take that moment to really be thankful. Just like you want your children to be thankful when you do good to them.
It's a decisive moment in life. I mean, looking forward is assume you want to do it. What the consequences of the alternative are, it's nothing that you want. I mean, I want to, the piece you said, "Hamotzi lechem min haaretz," that God brings, bread forth from the land, but bread doesn't occur naturally. You see how it links directly with Kol Motzi Pi Hashem, right? That you have to understand that, of course, God doesn't bring loaves of rye bread out of the ground. But you have to recognize that when you pick up that rye bread, that's a product of God.
Right.
Everything along the way.
Right.
If you do not, you risk the danger of the next couple of verses, right? If you look right after the verse you read, Shamelecha, right? Be careful lest you forget God and you don't keep the laws. Ki tochal v'savata. Because if you're not careful and you forget God and you don't keep the laws, when you eat, all that will happen is you'll be satisfied. Well, why? It's not bad, right? That's what we know. Uveirachta. Right? Because if you eat and you're satisfied and you don't bless, oy vavoy. Because what will happen is you'll turn to praise the only other option you have, which is yourself. And that leads into a few about 10 verses later, right? It's my power and the strength of my hand that gave me all this wealth and greatness, which is the exact opposite of life. That is the exact opposite of what God wants from us in the world.
Right. And very importantly, this does not mean that God wants us to be disempowered and to say, it's all you. It's all you. No, he says, appreciate your strength. If you have strength, great. But then just see that strength that I've given you, the eyeballs moving in your head, your brain working, your heart's pumping, you're living in the good land. That's from me. So if you've got strength, it's because I've given you that strength. So you say, God, give me strength, and I will honor the fact that you have given me that strength.
And this is the opposite of religious fatalism, like you're saying, of like, you know, everything's in the hand of God. If you look carefully at verse 18, the opposite of kochi v'otzim of this sort of claiming of all the power to yourself is Zacharta et Hashem lokecha. Notice the Shichcha Zacharta. This is about a forgetting or a remembering. It's not informational. It's what world do you live in? What's the frame of reference? You should remember Hashem lokecha ki hu hanoten lecha koach latzot chayil. He gives you strength to make that wealth and might. It doesn't say he gives you the might or the wealth itself. He gave you the strength to do it. This is a partnership model,
right?
In which you can only succeed. The achalta of zavata only really works if you have the berachta. If you're going to eat and be satisfied, you have to bless. Otherwise, it ends up being a curse and choking your throat.
I want to tell you that I have different kavanot. How do we call kavanot in English?
Intentions or focuses.
Okay.
Alignment.
When I say the Friday night, when I say the bracha on the blessing on the bread, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam motzi lechem min haaretz. So I have a few other thoughts about that. I say motzi lechem. It's from the word. I change it to the word milchama, like lecham, a war. In the end of times, Hashem, when we bless Him, will bring war away from. Take it out of the world. Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. He will take the milchama out from this world, and we bless Him for a time of peace. Because remember, you said something a second ago, which is bread doesn't come right from the tree, but in a messianic vision that is in the midrashim, then bread, gluskaot, bagels, will come right from the tree immediately. Danishes, of course, scones.
Danish.
Okay, a croissant. But the point is that there will be a time where there'll be no war. So Friday night, I like to think of Motzi Lechem Min Haaretz. He'll take the war out of this world in a messianic vision. And another one related to that, Lechem is also the same letters as Chalom, so which is a dream. So I say Motzi Lechem Min Haaretz. Who he brings dreams come true. He makes the great dreams that come from the earth, like Emet Meretz Titzmach, like a great vision comes from the earth, and he makes those. He takes them out of the great dreams that are somewhere hidden in our nature and miraculous ideas that are already embedded in nature, and will bring them forth one day. Little thoughts about Motzi Lechem Min Haaretz. Okay. However, let's go to a completely different type of feeling.
Something completely different.
Right? Chapter 9, verse 5.
I'm there.
And by the way, I am skipping fabulous verses. Please, ladies and gentlemen, please, I'm telling you, this is the one. Chapter 8 and 9 of the book of Deuteronomy is a must. So this verse, and I'm just taking snippets, samples here. God says to Moshe Rabbeinu, this is a speech by Moses to the Jewish people. He says about God, he says, it's not because you are so righteous or your heart is so straight that you are getting to inherit their land. Rather, it is because these Gentiles that were living in the land were iniquitous.
Ooh, wicked.
They were wicked.
Idolaters.
So he is dispossessing them. God is dispossessing them from before you. Why? Ulaman hikim et hadavar, and therefore he will fulfill the thing. Asher nishba Hashem lavotecha, he'll fulfill the oath that he swore to your forefathers, LaAvraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. And it goes on to say, just so you know, you are an am kshei oref. You are a stiff-necked people. And then he goes on to a litany list of the times that you angered God. So this is a different tack, which we haven't really heard that much, but it's like, I'm bringing you to a good land, but just remember, you're not so wonderful. It's
not about you, people.
Right, it's not about you. And you, in fact, aren't as wonderful as you think. You've actually angered God many times. And then he goes on to tell the story of the golden calf or the Merrill Lynch bull. He'll go off and he'll tell you the long story of that. But the point is that A, you're not so great, you're stiff-necked. Here's the list. B, the nations that were before you in the land of Israel, they were very wicked. And C, he made a promise to your forefathers. And so there's other things happening, not just your righteousness.
there's an unspoken D in that as well that we've talked about before, which is and therefore recognize that you don't keep my laws, you'll be next.
Right.
And that's the warning I see in the juxtaposition between this statement and the story of the golden calf, which is that what's the wickedness that they're being chased out for? It's idolatry and licentiousness. What happened at the golden calf? Idolatry and licentiousness. It's like, folks, this is not yours by intrinsic right. It's true there's a promise, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. So therefore, as we know in our history, I kick you out, you'll come back. But don't kid yourselves. I will kick you out.
Right, and we have verses that say just that, and indeed he did. So it's a fact.
It is a fact.
It's a fact. It's a fact. Let's go to chapter 10, verse 12. This is a great verse. On the one hand, very meaningful. On the other hand, a little bit funny, and I'll explain what I mean. A holy kind of funny, not a cynical kind of funny. Chapter 10, verse 12, Book of Deuteronomy. Vata Israel, and now, this is with an ayin, and now Israel. Ma Hashem Elokecha shoel mi'imach. What is Hashem, your God, asking from you? Nothing but ki'im lira'at Hashem Elokecha, just to fear God, Hashem, your God. Lelechet bechol derachav, walk in all of his paths. Le'avauto, to love him. U'la'avod et Hashem Elokecha, and to serve Hashem your God, b'chol levacha u'v'chol nafshecha.
Come on,
to serve Hashem your God with all of your heart and with all of your soul.
That's it.
I'm not asking that much. Just total commitment. Okay,
absolute devotion. Nothing else.
Right. It's not so tricky, people. Okay, that's all I'm asking you for here. Now, the reason that's a little bit funny is because I don't know the fancy linguistic term for the type of phrase this is in terms of language, like an intra, whatever it is. It's written as a question mark. What's it called? When you ask a
question.
It's a rhetorical question, but the way that the phrase is done is it's saying to you, like, what am I asking you? And then it's going to give the answer. The humor in that is that it sounds like a kind of Jewishy question, like, what am I already asking you? What am I asking you? Right? It's not I get no respect. You know, that's the kind of thing. But like on the other hand, the formula is quite demanding. Wow, quite demanding. So obviously the question isn't that small. I want, before I give you a chance to answer that, which I think is a very important question. My simple answer is actually there is something of great simplicity and relief here. If you know that your life is dedicated to God in toto, it actually does simplify a lot. It does simplify a lot. It's actually, for me, when I read these type of verses, I actually exhale because I realize it's not about my ambition. It's not about a million things. It's really about service of God. That's what I have to do. If I feel a certain inclination, I have to judge it as against that. Basically, it's a kind of like yardstick that exists with you throughout your life, and you know what you got to do. So in some place there, it is actually a great relief.
Yeah, I agree with you. I would add a couple of small thoughts. One is that we have this phrase that the sages say that Kol bidei shamayim chutz miyirat shamayim, that everything's in the hands of God except for the awe or fear of God. So that's part of what's being said here, which is like the truth of the matter is you don't control anything, says God. It's like you want to do this, you want to do that, you want to conquer cities, you want to make money, you want to raise a family, you want to stay healthy. So God says, like, yeah, that's not how it works. That's me. You know what you can do though? You can decide what's important to you. Mm-hmm. Right? One of the ways it manifests itself is how do you receive everything I give you, says God. Right? And this is a truism I can tell you from counseling in various contexts for many years. For me, it was always associated with the work I did with at-risk youth in the wilderness therapy, is that the only thing you can control in life is how you receive what happens to you. Everything else you can struggle with, you can be a partner in, but you can't control it. But you can control how you receive that which happens to you. And I think that's a big piece of what's being said here. Meaning the only thing God can really ask of you is these things. Because otherwise, Kol Motzei Pi Hashem. Everything comes from God, right? And the other piece here in the sort of narrative flow is it's a very important assertion that this is possible. That it is possible. That you know.
And the Rambam will ask that question, like, how do you love God? Like, how is it possible to cleave onto God, to love God? It's actually a philosophical problem, but the bottom line is, as you just pointed out, yes, it is possible. God tells you, you can love me. I let you love me. That's a great gift. Before we go on, I just want to mention, I want to say shalom to Barbara Rubin, who writes to me a lot, and I want to really bless her with a lot of success. She's a very smart lady, a very capable lady. And she's right now on Facebook. And I just want to say, Barbara, God bless you. And thank you so much for your good letters. And I want to wish you a lot of continued strength. Speaking of love, today, as we said, is Jewish reunification. But the nation knows it as Jewish Love Day. One of the great things that I love about Tu B'Av, other than the fact that I myself got married on Tu B'Av 18 years ago in Hebron around this hour, a little bit later, but it's one of the things that I love about it is that Israeli people know this date, and that's very knowing the Jewish calendar. It's a very important thing. And yesterday at Shuk Machane Yehuda, it was being celebrated in Jerusalem, Tu B'Av, even with COVID restrictions. So that's very special. And it's interesting that in our Torah portion, we actually have 2 commandments to love, maybe even more. But right here, it says, "V'ahavtam et hager, ki gerim haytem be'eretz Mitzrayim." Love the proselyte, the convert, or maybe the stranger, because you were strangers in the land of Egypt. And I know that folks on the liberal side of the aisle really feel this verse very strongly. I taught at Temple Emmanuel in Manhattan. I remember there was a long line of homeless people on Sunday morning there to receive food basket, and that was something that the Reformed Jews against took very, very seriously, to love the stranger, and I always thought that was a beautiful thing. But that's one of the loves, and certainly we're also taught that if somebody's a convert, don't remind them so much that they're coming from the outside. Treat them especially good because they're really outsiders, and therefore try to give them a sense that they're in and not out. And I know that if all of us that have friends converts try very hard to treat them well, and not only converts but strangers that respect and love Israel, Arabs who live in our land and respect our sovereignty, way to treat them with decency extra, and that's important. And a few verses later it says, "V'ahavta et Hashem Elokecha," love Hashem your God, "V'shamata mishmarto," keep His commandments, keep His mishmarto. How do we translate mishmarto? His
stay on his watch, stay on his
watch.
Team,
yeah, I like that. That's a beautiful turn of the phrase. V'shamarta mishmarto. I like that. I never kind of said v'shamarta mishmarto. Stay on His watch. V'chukav v'mishpatav, His edicts, His judgments, and His commandments. Kol hayamim, all the days. So Hashem says, just like you said before, Hashem says to us, you can love.
Yep. There's one beautiful insight. The Rambam asked the question, why do you need a special mitzvah to love the ger? Because once in his reading, this is a convert, which is the standard reading of the sages. Even though in context you're correct, it could also be read as the stranger, which is important reading. But because he says, wait, once the person converts, so they become a Jew, so they fall under V'ahavta l'recha kamocha. So one answer is I think fairly obvious sociologically, and it needs to be taken to heart, that a person who becomes a convert comes without all the social fabric and the sort of like backup, the family, etc. They enters into a community, and therefore they need an extra dose of love, which is a very important thing to remember. It's a quite complex world out there for Jews of choice. But there's a deeper level, I think, in what he says, is that that there's these, because the Rambam says you should love Him like you love God, as opposed to loving like you love Hashem, right? Why? Because the only human being who really creates something out of nothing, which is truly the divine aspect, is a person who goes from being a non-Jew to being a Jew, because they create a new obligation in the world. The acceptance of mitzvot that happens when a person chooses to become part of Am Yisrael creates a completely new opportunity to serve God in the universe. And that is not a small thing. So I think that's like a nuance. And when the Rambam says specifically you should love them like you love God as opposed to loving like you love all Jews, is I think what he's pointing toward is that it's a fantastic human capacity that's being expressed in the creation of that new relationship and the obligations that come with it.
So Andrea says, don't forget all of us Bnei Israel over here without our people in the exiles. She says, we are the exiles. Love us too. We are very lonely, she writes. That's powerful.
Definitely love you. Yeah, no, for sure, mamish.
And
I know
then,
I can't speak for you, although I probably can. Is that one of the reasons that we're always broadcasting is because that's the best way to reach you.
that's a great point, Rabbi Mike. Rabbi Mike, great point. That's really why we're doing this. You're so right. And Benjamin writes, I'll always be proud that my mother is a convert to Judaism so that I can be born as a Jew. Her choice is one of the biggest blessings in life.
Mamish.
Beautiful phrase. And by the way, same thing related to that is when people make aliyah. How many children have I met that say, I am so thankful to my parents that they made the hard decision to come to the land of Israel. And they did that for me. And so I could born and live my life here. Yep. Speaking of the land of Israel, let's go. There's a few different Torah portions that compete for most Zionistic.
This is one of them for sure.
This is one of them. And it says chapter 11, verse 10. For the land that you are coming to there to inherit. Lo keretz Mitzrayim here. It's not like Egypt, asher yatzata misham, which you left Egypt. Asher tizrad zarecha, when you plant a seed there, vishkita beraglecha, you can water it with your feet, kigan hayarek, which means to say you can make a little ditch from the Nile River and the water comes and it just, it's easy to get the water. Eretz Yisrael is different. Verse 11. The land which you are coming into, you are passing over into to inherit it. Eretz harim upkaot. It's a land of hills and valleys. Limtar hashamayim tishtemayim. The land will drink from the rains of heaven. Yeah. Keeps going. Wait, you know what? I'll stop there for a second.
I just want to point out that there's two readings to what you just said. There's a reading which says in Egypt it was easy because all you do is like kick outside a little bit of dirt, like you said, and the water just flowed from the Nile. And the contrast there is that there's a blessing in the difficulty of Eretz Yisrael because it's depending upon the rain. You have to daven instead of just having it like the easy life. There's a flip side, which Rashi brings, which is like in Egypt, you had to go down the Nile and schlep water by foot. Here in Eretz Yisrael, you go to bed, it rains, you wake up, your fields are growing. So it's in many ways, it really expresses those two sides of the experience, which is always available in a life of divine service in general, but particularly the embodied divine service, which is living in the land of Israel. It cuts both ways. And a lot of it depends on how you look at it. It was the good life back there, and I'm like forced to depend on God for my prayers. There's a benefit. Or is the good life here? And like, oh, thank God I got away from that toil.
Fabulous. It's a fabulous dichotomy, and I think it's very, very real. And I think that dichotomy is also pointed out to by the phrase "a land of hills and valleys." Mm-hmm. That in itself it says to you there's dichotomies in the land of Israel.
Oh, it's up and down.
Right. It's ups and downs. That's what I tell people. I said that verse means hold on to God in up and down. Okay, because it'll take you up sometimes, and you'll be in the highest heights. You'll also be in the lowest lows. As we say in the Gemara, mi garama labira mikta, like from a high place to a very low place, and so that's the land of Israel, and it's giving you a clue about it. Let's go to the last verse that I wanted to touch on today, chapter 11, Yud Aleph, Perek Yud Aleph, Pasuk Yud Bet, Parshat Ekev, chapter 11, verse 12, Torah portion of Ekev. Eretz asher Hashem Elokecha doresh ota tamid. Land. What's that?
Sorry, Eretz asher Hashem Elokecha doresh ota.
Oh, right. That's right. I make that mistake every year. And I know it. But every year I'm like, oh, that's what I mean, because it's like, here it is. Eretz asher Hashem Elokecha doresh ota. Tamid einei Hashem Elokecha ba. Right?
Yeah.
Right? Every year I make that mistake. Mireshit hashana v'ad achrit shana. A land which Hashem your God doreshota, demands of it, studies it, looks to it.
Yeah, that's the same dichotomy. Doresh could be demands. I'm asking you to do this. But it's also it's the land that God is seeking.
Right.
Meaning there's an active engagement. God demands something from the land, but there's also an active engagement by God, which is, of course, both sides of what we've been speaking about.
Right. Right. So he demands of it, but Rashi will say, to see what the land needs. And to
looking after it.
He's looking out for it. But in any case, and the Lubavitcher Rebbe always talked about this, from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. Balaturim here says, Mireshit, let me find it here. Otiyot mitishrei. Mireshit, it's mitishrei, he says. Okay. Oh, by the way, I wanted to say this last week. Ve'ahavta, the Balaturim says, love Hashem. He goes, Ve'ahavta, same letter says, ha'avot. The forefathers and mothers. That's what he says. He says, walk in their pathways. They knew how to love. They knew to love Hashem. Listen, Rabbi Mike, I want to finish off the show. I want people first thing to join you on your other program, which is called The Jewish Story. And you can find it at jewishstory.co.
That's right. Season 4 starting not next week, but the week after. Picking up season 4.
But you know what, folks? Don't worry about when Rabbi Mike is starting the next season. You got plenty of seasons to catch up on. Don't worry about it. Check out his website, jewishstory.co. He teaches the Pardes Institute and also his spirit counseling. That's jewishstory.co. Facebook.com/Rav Mike Foyer or Rav Mike at thelandofisrael.com.
Sure.
There you go. And many other ways, but easy enough to find it all at jewishstory.co. I want to also mention, you know what? With that, I will let you go, and I'll also mention some of ours in a second. Rabbi Mike Foyer, I want to thank you so much for being with us. I want to wish you have a day of reconnection.
Amen. Lana Lakomo so.
Amen. Reconnection with Jerusalem, reconnection with the Torah, reconnection with Hashem, reconnection with our spouses, reconnection with ourselves. Reconnection with our souls, bring a better connection between our body and our soul, and between the things that we really, and you know what else? Just one last thought with you. There's a border. I've learned this in Hasidic teachings. There's a border between our mind and our heart.
Yeah.
Sometimes we come to conclusions with our mind, but it's hard for us to down to the heart and to really change the ways that we behave. And so just like the borders between Jerusalem and the Jewish people were removed, so too there should be a removal between our higher thoughts, but they should be able to come into action, into a change in our characteristics in our heart. And that's another aspect of really reconnecting, which is faith and to our character. Maybe refine our character. Rabbi Mike Foyer, Rav Mike Foyer, thank you so much for joining us again today.
Thanks. See you soon. Bye-bye.
All right, that was Rav Mike. And just as we started getting bad connection with you.
I'm still here.
You're still. God bless you, Rabbi Mike. Thank you so much for being with us. All right, folks. And I just want to finish off the show by talking about some of our friends that make the show possible. And those are folks at Tchelet, right? And my good friend, Pinchas, out in Teaneck, just got his Tchelet, and he went to Tchelet.com. He wrote in coupon code Yishai and got the percentage points off. And what a schut it is for me to give you some percentage points off, some cost off to get this incredible mitzvah. You will love it. Don't miss it. Go to Tchelet.com and order your tzitzit with Blue String. Be a true blue Jew, coupon code Yishai. Check out hebronfund.org. We are so proud to be the home of the original couples, the mothers and the fathers, who are the original in-lovers, okay, who gave birth to a family which became a nation, the nation of Israel. That happens at Hebron. Check out hebronfund.org. Of course, support us and visit us any which way you can. Check out our Facebook page. Check out our lively content that helps you connect to the story of Hebron. And we have our new sponsor, which is Israel Wines, IsraelWines.com. Coupon code Yishai. You get 10% off of having a wine from Eretz Yisrael. Even during Corona, it's coming to you. So please check it out. Israel Wines, IsraelWines.com. Coupon code Yishai. And with no coupon code, and just check it out, Nefesh B'Nefesh, nbn.org.il will help you make Aliyah to the land of Israel. Download their forms, start filling it out. Don't worry about if you can't do it now. At least get the dream rolling. Get it moving in the right direction, and that is nbn.org.il. And of course, help me keep broadcasting. Help me keep this show wide, spread out to the world, and free. And connect to us by going to yishaifleisher.com/donate. And right now we have a very special find. We found 500 of these amazing CDs that I made years ago with the best Aliyah songs, best artists, best songs, best. It'll change your life when it's in your car, when it's in your life. So please write to me, Yishai at yishaifleisher.com or Yishai at thelandofisrael.com. Ask me for the CD, or just go to yishaifleisher.com/donate. Make sure that we can cover the cost of sending you the CD and continue our operations, and I will send it out to you ASAP. My good friend Yocheved will get it out to you ASAP all over the world. So please ask me for the Aliyah Revolution CD. I want to thank Moshe Herman. I want to thank Tabitha. I want to thank Ben Bresky for keeping this show rocking and getting out through the net waves to the world. Lots of love, and I'm sending you special blessings from the land of blessings on this Tu B'Shvat. I'm sending, just joking, this Tu B'Av, the other side of the year from Tu B'Shvat, this Tu B'Av, a holiday of reconnection and love, and also when Malkah and I got married, so it's a special day of blessings for me to you. I want to thank all the folks that joined us, including Penny, who says beautiful, including Andrea, including Alyssa, who says, thankfully, my son is in Beitar, raising his children in Israel. Excuse me, not Alyssa, but Alice. That's right, Alice. Mazal Tov. That's so great that your son is here and raising his children not so far away from me here. Binyamin and all the other folks, Barbara, all the good folks that joined us from all over the world. Love to you and lots of blessings from the land of blessings. Stay tuned, stay connected, stay strong, stay part of the story, and shalom.
Only the poem that sets the heart on fire, says Uri Tzvi Greenberg, is not a falsehood like all other achievements. Its truth is the only truth. And I'll tell you the truth, I'm here to try and tell you the truth as I see it, because I'm Rav Mike Foyer, and this is the Jewish story.